Hello, and welcome to the hopefully successful second episode. Made it all the way to episode 2 at long last.
And lost 2 people along the way.
Yeah, everyone's gone away this weekend because, they've got lives and apparently we don't.
So it's just me and Mike, a few of the many.
Did you see the news recently about UKIP, like literally yesterday, about Gerard Batten, the new leader of UKIP, the 4th one in 2 years, by the way, 4th permanent leader, has hired Tommy Robinson, aka Stephen Yaxley-Lennon, as the advisor on grooming gangs.
Yes.
And everyone has gone berserk about this, and by everyone, I mean everyone up to and including Nigel Farage, who said, this is outrageous, this man's an extremist. At the very time when we need UKIP for Brexit, Gerard Batten is just pulling us to the extremist right fringe. But it seems to be quite a PR coup for UKIP, I think, because Tommy Robinson has been attracting a lot of attention recently, if you've seen on YouTube.
Yes.
Basically, Tommy Robinson was the founder of the English Defence League, which has been notorious for its street rallies and clashing with anti-fascist demonstrations, and generally it's kind of been seen as the successors of the British National Party, the BNP. Yeah. It's not an electoral force, so to speak, but it has been attracting attention online and elsewhere. Now, Tommy Robinson has left the EDL, and he's kind of subsequently gone off to do his own thing. But he recently came back into prominence again about May this year,
yes,
when he was filmed outside a Crown Court talking about a case about grooming gangs. He was arrested for this, and loads of people were like, oh, this is a free speech issue, blah, blah, blah. But if you go back to it, it's like the man brought it on himself, and we'll tell you why. Because the story goes back to 2017, where Tommy Robinson was given a 3-month suspended sentence after he admitted a contempt of court charge for attempting to photograph juvenile defendants in the court case. Now, court security had told Robinson not to film in and around the court. That is, not to film around the court, as this would lead to his arrest. So what happens? He continues to film, gets arrested, is given a 3-month suspended sentence. He is told that if he does it again, or any other criminal activities, it can be reactivated within 18 months.
And yet still had people rallying around him.
Move on to May of this year, and he's doing it again with the grooming gang in, I believe it was Huddersfield, where he went around and he was filming it when he was told explicitly not to. There were signs on the court saying, do not film, and allow the suspects in this case to go free, which he admitted on the recording, saying, I've got to be really careful, guys, because I can go to prison for this. And he was arrested. So naturally, what do people do? They go absolutely berserk and are like, Britain's becoming a totalitarian state. It's becoming a fascist dictatorship.
This is an infringement on our freedom of speech. We should be allowed to freely offend people.
We should be freely allowed to cause mistrials, let grooming gangs go free, because I see that other people are making money from this, so I can be a martyr. This seems to become a YouTube personality. And that's what he's become. So if he's so bothered about paedophilia, B, why does he almost enable the case to collapse and let these people not be convicted of their crimes?
Exactly.
I mean, surely it wasn't used the situation as a chance to make himself a martyr, bring attention to himself.
Oh, not at all.
So he could make the money that other far-right activists are making, buy himself a gated mansion, go on tour in Australia right now for $995 a head to sit at a table with him.
Not in the slightest.
If he's so concerned about paedophilia, why is he not calling out Lee Macmillan, who was a senior English Defence League minister, who was convicted of paedophilia charges dating back to the 1990s, grooming a 10-year-old girl?
That's another thing, isn't it? It's hypocrisy. You know, when it's non-white issues, he's perfectly happy to go straight on the persecution, but as soon as it's a white man or a white person
in their own organisation,
it's a completely different story, and he just turns a blind eye to it. It's just hypocritical.
Or say, Richard Price, another English Defence League figure who was convicted of downloading child pornography. The English Defence League and Tommy Robinson not only didn't completely reject Price and everything he stood for, but they actively campaigned for his release, saying he was convicted on false charges and things like that. But, of course, you could say that's other people around him, B, couldn't you? You could say that, he's just surrounded by bad figures. The court trial thing was just him being so passionate about the issues. Really, he's a good guy, he's a British patriot.
We say that, but that's what people see.
Exactly.
That it really is. The disillusioned in Britain, they see him as a martyr. They see him as a working class hero. 100%. You can't even deny that.
That is the problem, in the sense that these people, a lot of people are naturally, they're not bad people, they're not necessarily racist or things like that, but what they see is an issue of injustice, like, grooming gangs and things like that. We should all be against that kind of thing, and I'd like to think we are. But he is manipulating the media to show that, it's only an issue on one side. But the fact of the matter is, what he was doing was potentially allowing those people to go free.
And another thing, which is slightly off topic, so correct me if I'm wrong, but Tory austerity has caused deprivation in its masses in working class communities, and it's people like Tommy Robinson that have given a voice to the working classes. I mean, you've got cuts left, right and centre. People are disillusioned, people are tired of the current state of the country. Tommy Robinson's been very clever in pitting the disillusioned against minorities, and that is what people have latched onto. He's been very good at pitting them against minorities and diverting the attention away from the middle classes and the people with power, the people that are actively making these decisions, who are enforcing austerity, who are causing these cuts. And, why shouldn't they support him? Do you understand? He's given a voice to the working classes, and I can understand why. I really can. I really can understand why they rally behind him.
But I totally get that, but his prescription doesn't offer the change they're seeking.
No, not at all. And obviously, I mean, when you look deeper into it, everything he stands for is horrific. Completely horrific. I mean, his views are totally wrong, but
it's about political education. It's about re-engaging.
Completely. It's about re-engaging, and I don't think we should blame people. I don't think we should blame working classes for supporting somebody with his ideologies when, we have alternatives. We have left-wing politics. We have, liberalism, and we have all these alternatives. But at the moment, why are those alternatives not becoming accessible to the disillusioned working classes? Do you understand?
Yeah, I do. I'd argue that liberalism in its neoliberal form economically has been the problem, because for successive decades you've had governments of various stripes who have gutted industry in this country. Private companies have shipped jobs overboard or otherwise rescaled up to more white-collar, service-based jobs.
Again, slightly off topic, but there's been a massive increase in support for left-wing politics over the past few years. But I would argue that that's largely been driven by social media, by the internet, by students, and it's become almost an elite club. Do you understand? It's become a very middle-class movement, and I think it is widening the gap between working-class people who would benefit from left-wing politics and middle-class people who see it as trendy. And I think that is a criticism that we really seriously need to look at. Sorry, this has taken a very critical turn.
No, I mean, I think there is too much on social media about, look at you thick racist,
Yeah.
And they're not actually attacking the point. One thing I learned I was reading a book on Michael Foot, actually, and his biographer said that one of the points that both he and Nye Bevan had in common from his perspective was they would always attack an opponent's argument at the strongest point to demolish it and show it up for what it was. And I think that's what a lot of us need to learn. And I don't know if in left-wing politics, in left-wing political parties, certainly not in the Labour Party at the moment, that there's that kind of real hothouse political education movement where we teach people to think well, kind of dialectically, and how to respectfully and systematically demolish people's arguments, and yet at the same time make them feel like they can be a part of something, you know. Not say, oh, we acknowledge you have legitimate concerns and therefore we need to turn to the right and ape the Tories or UKIP on certain policies, but we do need to say, I know why you feel frustrated, but there is an alternative, there is a better world. So the more you look at Tommy Robinson, the more you see him for, you know, what a common criminal he actually is. For someone who calls himself a patriot, he sure seems to enjoy attacking police.
Yeah.
In 2005, he was jailed for 12 months. He had assaulted an off-duty police officer who had intervened to stop a confrontation between him and his partner, who both at that time, both of them were BNP members. 2010, he is again charged with assaulting a police officer during clashes at a rally, and after the fighting, the police officer was taken to hospital for heroically trying to intervene in what had become a brawl between 50 people. 2011, again convicted of assault from an attack at an EDL march in Blackburn. Robinson launched into what was described as a verbal tirade against anti-fascist protesters, which is fair enough, right up until the point when he then proceeded to headbutt one of the marchgoers. And he calls us the intolerant left. In July 2011, he's found guilty of leading a brawl that includes 100 Luton Town football fans into a fight with fans from Newport County. Given a suspended 12-month prison sentence, banned from football matches for 3 years. Then he goes up into white-collar crime, you know, just to sort of spread it around a bit. 2014, he's sentenced to prison for 18 months for committing mortgage fraud worth £160,000. Whilst passing the sentence, Judge told Robinson, this was an operation which was fraudulent from the outset and involved a significant amount of forward planning. I am satisfied you took part in a thoroughly dishonest course of conduct. And then, of course, you get to the contempt of court case. So there is a real pattern of aggressive, antisocial behaviour, not learning from his mistakes, assault, things like that. Does he just sound like a common football lout?
Do you know what, Mike? He does. But oh well, let's just look at the real issues here, shall we?
Let's look at a real, you know, anti-British who hates this country. And
oh, completely.
It's Jeremy Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn.
What's he done this year, B?
He wore a poppy, Mike.
It wasn't just any poppy, though. It was a smaller poppy.
It was a small poppy. Can you believe it?
Babe.
Can you believe that he wore a small poppy?
Which did cost more than the usual paper poppy.
Unbelievable.
Contributing more funds to the Royal British Legion.
Disgrace.
And he had the temerity to go in a £50 Marks and Spencer's jacket. Wow, you know, he should have taken a lead from the other people around him and dressed in a £1,500 Savile Row coat.
Because that's really reflective of who he is and of his policies, isn't it?
Well, you know, he wouldn't want to be in touch, would he, with what people go through?
Well, not at all. Wouldn't want to be in touch with his electorate.
Well, personally, I think he looked fine, but people were like, he's not respecting the troops, despite having policies that would help living veterans and serving members of the armed forces more than the Conservative governments who wore slightly bigger poppies. But, you know, all these people complaining about Corbyn's jacket, I sometimes wonder about how these people think, basing your approval of someone on how stylish and expensive looking their outfit is. I mean, clearly Corbyn should be modelling himself on someone like, say, Hitler and the SS and their Hugo Boss uniforms.
I mean, at the start, you know, when he was first going for leader, and he wore, was it the tweed jackets?
Something like that,
yeah. And it was it Cameron who said, do up your shirt and sing the national anthem? And
yeah, tuck your shirt in.
And
do up your tie.
People berated him for the way that he dressed, and he went about sort of, not remodelling himself, but sort of wearing the, you know, more as of late, wearing the suits and the shirts, and that's still not right for people, even though he's actively, you know, tried to conform more to the Westminster stereotype. That's still not enough for people. People are going to still find things to criticise about him. But they're not criticising his policies. They're criticising what he wears, which seems to be a pattern that's ongoing at the minute, really, doesn't it? It's constantly little things that people will find, rather than actually having a discussion about his beliefs and his convictions, you know?
I couldn't agree more with that. But it's not just the case that it's like, oh, it's a different opinion on what constitutes respectful dress at the cenotaph on Remembrance Sunday. It's also the fact that some newspapers actually go out their way to sabotage and distort the truth. Like, I don't know if you remember last year or a couple of years ago, Corbyn was walking to the Remembrance do with a soldier, an old veteran, and the Sun edited out the soldier from the picture and made it look as though Corbyn was laughing and doing a jig by himself on the way to the thing. And it's like, to what end? I mean, it's like, you know, they make all these things about support our troops, and yet when it comes to actual policies, they just attack the man, not the substance.
But the point is that the papers that print these things are the content that is available to the wider electorate. Is there any wonder, you know, that people have their doubts about Corbyn when this is the information that is readily available to them, you know?
I think that's why you're seeing such a generational divide in politics as well.
Completely.
Because I saw some polls they did where if it was just 18s to 25s voting, Tories would not win a seat anywhere. Labour would win 600 seats.
And again, that's the difference between, you know, I'm not saying that the internet is specifically a young person tool, but it's the difference between generations who the first thing they turn to is the paper for information, and generations where the first thing they turn to is the internet for information. And I think that's where the split on Corbyn, that's really the core of it, because when you're reading the papers and that's your first source of knowledge and information, it's a very biased, you know, opinionated anti-Corbyn propaganda, if you will. But the internet, you know, you've got Twitter, you've got Facebook, you know, people have varying opinions, but it seems to, on the whole, be more unbiased, because you've got not the information that is reported seems to be more unbiased.
It certainly counters the bias of.
You've got every opinion under the sun being posted on the internet. You've not got one concrete opinion that's being printed in a paper, if that makes sense. You've got access to a variety of viewpoints, and I think that's where the split is. That's why there's such a difference.
Definitely. I think you see this more and more as you break down the polling, because I was seeing something like Labour now leads by 9 points with everyone under the age of 75.
Yes.
But over the age of 75, who are traditionally not as on social media as much or whatever, it is to the Tories by 56%.
Yeah.
56 points. And, I mean, if it were something like under the age of 55 we're just voting, Corbyn would be on course for a 1997 style landslide. So he is not as unpopular as people make out. It's just that there are these huge generational weightings on either side. And consumption of media, I think, is a big part in how one thinks about these things and what decisions one's more likely to come and make.
Completely.
Still, the court of public opinion is everything when it comes to politics.
Mm-hmm.
So we've put our heads together. We've thought of ways that Corbyn could give himself a makeover and get the landslide that we so desperately want. So what things are there, Bea?
Grow a Boris Johnson type mop hairstyle to appeal more to Tory voters.
And we've all seen how Nigel Farage cultivated the man of the people persona, the pint of bitter and the fag and the sharp suit. I mean, Corbyn doesn't drink or smoke, but obviously you have to change his habits if you're to try this idea out. And he might hoover up a lot of UKIP supporters at the same time. Or we could look back in history and see how the most charismatic leaders in our past have attired themselves. Need look no further than great British hero Winston Churchill. Homburg and cigar would give Corbyn the Churchill look. He could guzzle and smoke them when reviewing the hard-pressed, underfunded troops in Afghanistan, just like the great wartime leader did himself.
His team could circulate secret photos of him wearing the classic Lady Thatcher blue twin set and pearls. Not only would that appeal to the hardcore Tories, we'd snap up the vote from all of the secret cross-dressers living in the suburbs.
And you mentioned Boris looking at hairstyles again. How about Donald Trump? Maybe a comb-over would suit Corbyn.
That'd do it.
ape the most famous and powerful man on earth. Surely that's going to be a good move.
Maybe even some fake tan.
This could be taken a stage further using the power of video. Corbyn could go bare-chested, Vladimir Putin style, on his allotment, cutting his hedges and the shrubs with a petrol hedge trimmer, wrestling deadly animals like Siberian tigers.
With his bare hands.
But I think our British equivalent would be like an enraged cow or something. That would scoop up all the weird Putin fanboys on the internet as well.
But for God's sake, no matter what, he must avoid anything that Theresa May's done. Dancing again, eating a cone of chips.
What have we been talking about, B? He mustn't forget to cover himself in poppies, just to be on the safe side. Not just in November, but all year round. And that'll show people who the real patriot is.
And if we've learned anything, stay away from bacon sandwiches.
Yes. But after all this, in conclusion, we thought this was a stupid idea. We need to be focusing on the policies and outlooks of political leaders, not what they wear or how they bow or present themselves at the Cenotaph once a year. Within reason, of course. So let's do just that. Let's talk about Labour's policies, which will benefit the armed forces and veterans on homelessness, for example. Labour's recently launched a new social contract for our armed forces and veterans, and the policies include ending the scourge of veterans sleeping rough on our streets, with homes reserved for people with a history of rough sleeping, which include, I believe, up to 13,000 war veterans, disproportionately affected and more likely to end up homeless because of the lack of social housing, lack of mental health care provision, free education and retraining through the National Education Service, new career opportunities through increased apprenticeship numbers.
Mental health issues as well, PTSD, treated as seriously as, physical health issues are, which I think is really important, because I think there's still a stigma that, mental health issues aren't as serious as physical issues are.
And particularly among men as well.
Completely. There's still such a taboo around male mental health.
And Labour's also apparently due to announce the government's veterans strategy. It's calling on the government to officially register the number of homeless veterans, officially log the numbers of veterans who sadly commit suicide, prioritise their mental health, and do more to help them start new careers through improved access to education and training. So, what about that? Do you think that makes up for, the small metal poppy?
I think that truly demonstrates how patriotic we truly are as a party, more than anything. We're recognising the contributions, the incredible contribution of these veterans to the country, and we're actively thinking about policy that will benefit them realistically. That, to me, is the most important thing. The surface stuff is all well and good for tabloid reporting, but at the core of it, we're making real change.
But to make that change, we've got to get into office. And how do we go about, getting the people who feel left behind, particularly by Labour, back on board again? Because, traditionally, your Tommy Robinson supporting demographic were tribal Labour voters a decade, 2 decades ago. It's what do we do about, how do we sort of not, have those conversations and sort of not only educate ourselves on how to have those conversations, but, bring people back into this movement and, make them feel a part of it and broaden the scope of the people who are behind this, great manifesto.
Going to music festivals and chanting "Oh Jeremy Corbyn" is all well and good and is great fun, but it's the people that are hard to reach that we need to reach.
I'm going to suggest this, and how you're standing for council in Skegby.
I am.
So I'm sure you have experienced this yourself on the doorstep. Have you been discussing things with people on the doorstep who are like, I'll never vote Labour again because of this issue?
Yes.
And what's been your experiences with that?
I always come equipped on the doorstep. I've always got specific policies in mind, policies that will directly benefit residents in my area. And I'll say to them, you've read smears in the newspaper, but what are the issues that affect you in your day-to-day life? That is what Labour cares about. We are the party of working people, and it's people like the residents in my ward that for the most part we serve,
But what if someone says, you're not the party of working people, you've left us behind in favour of Muslim immigrants or whatever? Have you encountered that?
I have, and my response remains the same. The Labour Party accommodates for all people, regardless of race, class and gender. It ensures that everybody has an equal chance in life. And I can't say any more than that. I really can't.
The thing we've got to be doing is politically educating our activists to not be, the movement which loves itself. And I do believe people support Jeremy Corbyn for the right reasons. But it's like, how do we get the message beyond the converted? And we did do a lot of that at the last election. It's just that there are still a lot of people in what should be traditional Labour areas who can't come back to us. And that's not to say, progress or people like that are right, because to me, the policies enacted under the Blair years, while there was some good stuff, at the same time there was a lot of stuff which, we took that constituency for granted, so to speak. And we need to get back in touch with, speaking to those people, but from a very not giving into the prejudices and fears, but showing how a better left alternative socialist world is possible. Ironically, with the pacifist vegetarian from Islington with the allotment, whose policies are better than ultra-patriot, nuclear weapon launching Theresa May, who really doesn't give a toss about the thousands of veterans dying on our streets at risk from universal credit and things like that.
What's Jeremy's cat called?
El Gato, Spanish for the cat.
What's Theresa May's cat called?
Larry.
And when all's said and done...
He's even got a foreign name for his cat.
El Gato's true place is in 10 Downing Street with Larry the cat. Thank you very much.
Apparently Larry fights all the other cats which come near. So, cat battles if Corbyn gets into 10 Downing Street. Whether that's a plus for him or a minus, we leave up to you to decide. Anyway, so, at the end of the day, we want to remember, the working class people who've died in previous wars. But more importantly than that, we want to, help the armed forces serving today.
It's about looking forward, isn't it?
And, preventing the veterans of now and the future from living lives on the streets, rough homelessness, living lives of great deprivation and, lacking in the things which should be naturally available to everyone in the 5th or 6th richest country on the entire planet.
Thanks again for listening. Absolutely outstanding that you've been able to put up with us for an entire 2 episodes.
Thanks to the 70 people who've listened so far. We're on our way to stardom. We're hoping it's going to be like, we're not going to lose at least half the listeners. So, thank you very much.